This week, we've been reminding ourselves of the story of Jonah and the incredible flip turns that God brought about in his life. We've talked about how he initially ran from God when he was too fearful to accept God's mission to go to an enemy city and pronounce God's judgment on them. And then yesterday, we talked about how, despite his rebellion, God didn't give up on Jonah. Well, continuing in that story, we learn that during his time in the belly of the fish, Jonah repents of his rebellion and he vows to do what God initially called him to do. And after that, God has the fish spit him out onto the beach. And then we read this. Then the Lord spoke to Jonah a second time. Get up and go to the great city of Nineveh and deliver the message I have given you. What I think is worth pointing out here is that while Jonah did reconcile his relationship with God, it didn't change what God wanted him to do. I thought about this recently after I asked my 4-year-old to clean her room. You would have thought that I asked her to clean every room in the house by the intensity of the temper tantrum that followed. She flung herself on the floor and proceeded to wail for the next, I kid you not, probably 20 minutes. When she was finally calm enough to talk to, I sat her down and I told her that I loved her, but that I wasn't proud of the way that she responded to my request. She apologized, she gave me a big hug, and then I said, okay, it's time for you to go clean your room now. I didn't even have time to take another breath before she flung herself to the floor again for tantrum number 2. So in other words, she thought that reconciliation was the end of the story. She said she was sorry. I told her I forgave her. In her mind, case closed. Now don't get me wrong, reconciliation is hugely important, but so is repentance. Repentance is our opportunity to authenticate our reconciliation. Or put another way, telling God that we're sorry for something that we have done or said, that's important. But we're not done. We demonstrate the sincerity of our repentance in action. That's why it was so important for God to call Jonah a second time to that original calling. Because if Jonah had said no a second time, well, then that heartfelt apology in the belly of the fish would have revealed itself to be maybe a bit superficial. But instead, God will often call us right back to the very thing that undid us in the first place so that we can have the opportunity to demonstrate our repentance. Call it a flip turn, call it a do-over, call it grace. Are you sensing that God is giving you a second chance at something that you recently messed up? If so, take some time today to reconcile with God, and this time ask Him for the courage and the strength to act in faith on what He's calling you to do.